In the headlines, Al Jazeera journalist killed in Israeli strike. The Qatari-based network says Israel's military killed 5 of its journalists in Gaza. Israel claims one was a Hamas commander, a charge the network denies. The United Nations condemns the killings and calls for an independent investigation. In Washington, Liberation Day, President Donald Trump declares a public safety emergency in the District of Columbia, orders a federal takeover of the Washington's police force, and pledges a tougher crackdown on crime. Trump is also delaying new tariffs on China. The U.S. president extends a tariff truce with Beijing for 90 days, pushing a planned hike to mid-November as tensions over trade and Russian oil purchases persist. In the Philippines, a flood control scam. Baguio's mayor says he's ready to name lawmakers allegedly profiting from questionable projects if Congress meets his condition. The UN is demanding justice in Syria, calling for accountability over last month's deadly shooting inside a hospital in the south. I'm Franco Baranda. Newsline World starts now. Al Jazeera says 5 of its journalists have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in Gaza. Israel's military says one of them was a Hamas commander, a claim the network denies. This report. The attack took place Sunday evening near the main gate of Al-Shifa Hospital in Gaza. The journalists had been sheltering what the network says was a journalist camp near the hospital when it was struck. 5 Al Jazeera staff members were killed. Among the dead, Anas al-Sharif, a well-known correspondent of Al Jazeera. The strike hit outside the hospital's main gate. The director of Al-Shifa Hospital told Al Jazeera the location was likely targeted directly. Those killed include correspondent Anas al-Sharif, along with Mohammed Kariki, Ibrahim Zahir, and Mohammed Nufal. Cameraman Muamin Aliwa also died. The network says, along with 2 others not employed by Al Jazeera, bringing the death toll to 7. Al-Sharif had been reporting on the humanitarian situation in Gaza. Moments before his death, he posted a video on social media showing Israeli strikes on the city, describing what he called relentless bombardment. Israel's military acknowledged that it targeted al-Sharif and claimed that he was the head of a Hamas terrorist cell responsible for advancing rocket attacks on Israeli civilians and IDF troops. The Israeli Defense Forces also released documents that show his enlistment with Hamas in 2013, an injury report from 2017, and his military rank. Al Jazeera rejects those allegations, calling them part of a campaign of incitement against its journalists. Reporters Without Borders says nearly 200 journalists had been killed since the war began in October 2023. Israel restricts access to Gaza for foreign journalists, allowing only occasional visits under military escort. For God and my beloved Philippines, Franco Baranda, SM9 News. The United Nations is calling for those behind a deadly shooting at a hospital in southern Syria last month to face justice. Notice to our viewers, some of the footages that we're about to show may be distressing. Security camera footage released Sunday from a hospital in Suwaida appears to show men in military uniform forcing medical workers wearing scrubs down to their knees. Here we see a military official fatally shooting one of the hospital staff. United Nations or UN spokesperson Stefan Dujarric says the reports are extremely disturbing, condemning any violence inside the medical facilities. He noted that the Syrian authorities have promised a full investigation and said the UN will await the findings, stressing that the government has a duty to protect all citizens regardless of religion or ethnicity. Duracic added the accountability must follow the facts, but for now, the investigation remains in Damascus' hands. Australia is taking a historic step in Middle East diplomacy. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese says the country will formally recognize the State of Palestine at the United Nations General Assembly next month. Joy Tabanao reports.
Australia will join a growing list of Western nations, including France, the United Kingdom, and Canada, backing a two-state solution, recognizing a Palestinian state alongside Israel.
Today I can confirm that at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September, Australia will recognise the State of Palestine. Australia will recognise the right of the Palestinian people to a state of their own, predicated on the commitments Australia has received from the Palestinian Authority. We will work with the international community to make this right a reality. Australia is making this statement today following our Cabinet meeting as part of a coordinated global effort building momentum for a two-state solution.
The move, Albanese says, is based on assurances from the Palestinian Authority, excluding Hamas from government, demilitarizing Gaza, and holding elections. He calls the two-state solution humanity's best hope to end decades of bloodshed.
A two-state solution is humanity's best hope to break the cycle of violence in the Middle East and to bring an end to the conflict, suffering and starvation in Gaza, a state of Israel and a state of Palestine, with security for the people of both nations.
Meanwhile, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu criticized the move, labeling it disappointing and shameful. Nearly 150 of the 193 UN member states have recognized Palestinian statehood, while the United States and some others say it should come only through a final peace agreement with Israel. Albanese insists Australia's recognition is more than symbolic, calling it a practical step toward lasting peace. Joy Tabanao, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
U.S. President Donald Trump says his goal is to get Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky in the same room for direct talks on ending the war in Ukraine. He plans to organize a face-to-face between the Russian and Ukrainian leaders. The comment comes just days before Trump's August 15 meeting with Putin in Alaska. This is a session expected to focus on possible terms for ending the conflict between the two sides.
Out of control, but we're going to put it in control very quickly. The next meeting will be with Zelensky and Putin, or Zelensky and Putin and me. I'll be there if they need, but I want to have a meeting set up between the two leaders.
Trump made clear Zelensky will not be part of his meeting with Putin this week, saying the Ukrainian leader has already attended a lot of meetings without progress.
Waller, he wasn't a part of it. I would say he could go, but he's gone to a lot of meetings. You know, he's been there for 3.5 years, nothing happened.
And what is the definition?
I mean, do you want somebody that's been doing this for 3.5 years?
Moscow has accused Zelensky of prolonging a war he cannot win, while Putin says he's not opposed to meeting his Ukrainian counterpart, but only if certain conditions are met. Putin has also questioned whether Zelensky can legally sign any binding agreements, noting his presidential term expired last year and elections have not been held under martial law in Ukraine. Up next, in Washington, Liberation Day, President Donald Trump declares a public safety emergency in Washington, orders a federal takeover of the city's police force, and pledges a tougher crackdown on crime. Trump is also delaying new tariffs on China. The U.S. president extends a tariff truce with Beijing for 90 days, pushing a planned hike to mid-November as tensions over trade and Russian oil purchases persist. Newsline World will be back after the break.
Matunog ngayon ang salitang impeachment sa Pilipinas dahil sa nakambang impeachment trial kay Vice President Sara Duterte. Pero ang tanong ng taong bayan, Ito ba ay para sa interes ng bansa o para sa politikal na motibo lamang? Sa ilalim ng saligang batas, may mga opisyal ng pamahalaan na maaaring tanggalin sa pwesto sa pamamagitan ng impeachment. Kabilang dito ang Pangulo, Pangalawang Pangulo, mga mahistrado ng Korte Suprema, mga miyembro ng Constitutional Commission at ang Ombudsman. Maaaring ma-impeach ang mga nabanggit na opisyal dahil sa matinding paglabag sa konstitusyon, pagtataksil sa bayan, panunuhol, katiwalian, mabibigat na krimen o pagtataksil sa tiwala ng publiko. Sa kasaysayan ng Pilipinas, ilang matataas na opisyal na ang humarap sa impeachment trial. Noong taong 2000, si Pangulong Joseph Erap Estrada ang unang Pangulo ng bansa na humarap sa isang impeachment trial. Taong 2011 naman, si Ombudsman Mercedes Gutierrez ay naharap din sa impeachment dahil sa umano'y kapabayaan sa pag-aksyon sa mga kaso ng katiwalian. Hindi na siya humarap sa pagdinig sapagkat bago pa magsimula ang impeachment trial ay nagbitiw na ito sa pwesto. Noong 2012, si Chief Justice Renato Corona ay napatalsik naman mula sa Korte Suprema sa unang pagkakataon na impeach ang isang Chief Justice matapos mapatunayang hindi niya idineklara ang kanyang Statement of Assets, Liabilities, and Net Worth o SALN ng buo. Ano nga ba ang proseso ng pag-impeach sa isang mataas na opisyal batay sa konstitusyon? Maaaring magsampa ng reklamo ang isang miyembro ng Kongreso o isang mamamayan basta may sumusuportang kongresista. Kapag 1/3 ng mga miyembro ng Kamara ang sumang-ayon, tuloy na agad ang proseso ng impeachment sa Senado. Sa sandaling maaprubahan ito ng House of Representatives, binubuo na ang Articles of Impeachment, isang dokumento na naglalaman ng mga aligasyon o batayan para sa impeachment. Pero tandaan, walang impeachment proceedings na maaaring isampa laban sa parehong opisyal ng higit sa isang beses sa loob ng isang taon. Ang Senado naman ang magsisilbing impeachment court kapag ang Pangulo ang nililitis, ang punong mahistrado ang namumuno, ngunit hindi bumoboto. 2/3 ng mga senador ang kailangan para hatulan ang opisyal. Anong parusa? Pagkakatanggal sa pwesto at diskwalifikasyon na makabalik sa gobyerno. Ang impeachment ay hindi simpleng usapin sa politika. Isa itong seryosong proseso na maaaring makaapekto sa kinabukasan ng bansa. Kaya sa panahong puno ng ingay at intriga, kinakailangan nating maging mapanuri, patas at maging makabayan. Bantayan natin ang katotohanan, pumanig tayo sa hustisya at higit sa lahat, unahin natin ang interes ng sambayanang Pilipino.
Children will grow up and bring the joy, the love, the peace, and compassion to the whole world. We only have one planet. We only have one Earth. And I hope that this new generation of children that we have reached out will become millions and billions and bring peace on Earth. Bring peace to humanity.
In Washington, President Donald Trump is taking unprecedented steps to address what he calls a crime crisis in the nation's capital, declaring a public safety emergency in the District of Columbia and announcing Liberation Day, placing the city's police department under direct federal control. Valdivia Gracia has the latest.
President Donald Trump made the announcement during a media briefing on Monday, invoking Section 740 of the District of Columbia Home Rule Act, a move that shifts command of the Metropolitan Police Department from city officials to the federal government.
This is Liberation Day in D.C., and we're going to take our capital back. I'm officially invoking Section 740 and placing the D.C. Metropolitan Police Department under direct federal control, and you'll be meeting the people that will be directly involved with that. Very good people, but they're tough, and they know what's happening, and they've done it before. In addition, I'm deploying the National Guard to help reestablish law, order, and public safety.
The president cited what he described as skyrocketing crime rates, claiming murders, car thefts, and carjackings have surged in recent years, comparing DC's murder rate to some of the world's most dangerous sites.
The murder rate in Washington today is higher than that of Bogota, Colombia, Mexico City, some of the places that you hear about as being the worst places on earth, much higher. You look at the kind of numbers we have. D.C., 41 per 100,000, number one that we can find anywhere in the world. Other cities are pretty bad, but they're not as bad as that.
Earlier in Truth Social, he vowed to liberate the capital from crime, savagery, filth, and scum. However, a Justice Department report released earlier this year paints a different picture, showing violent crime in D.C. fell to a 30-year low in 2024, down 35% from the previous year.
There was a story about a man who just left. He quit because he was asked to do phony numbers on crime. And we're going to look into that. I think Pam is going to be looking into that. But he was asked by the city, I guess, that we don't want to show the real numbers. Let me do numbers so it looks like it's going down. Not going down.
Trump's decision marks the first time in decades that federal authorities have assumed direct control of Washington's police force, a move likely to spark legal and political challenges in the weeks ahead. In response to Trump's order, Washington, D.C. Mayor Muriel Bowser called the move unsettling and unprecedented, adding that the district is able to take care of its citizens. Reporting for Newsline World, this is Valdivia Gracia, SMNA News.
U.S. President Donald Trump has extended a tariff truce with China for another 90 days, just hours before a planned hike was due to take effect. Beijing has responded in kind, suspending its own retaliatory measures for the same period. Trump signed executive order pushing the deadline to mid-November. The U.S. and China say the rest of their trade agreement remains unchanged. If the extension had fallen through, tariffs would have returned to the steep levels seen during the peak of 2024 trade dispute, with U.S. duties at 145% and China's at 125%. Washington says Beijing has made progress in addressing unfair trade practices, but warns that the large annual deficits remain a threat to U.S. security and the economy. The move comes as tensions between Washington and Beijing remain high over Beijing's continued purchases of Russian crude, a trade which the U.S. says undermines efforts to end the war in Ukraine. South Korea and Vietnam are strengthening ties, with leaders agreeing to almost double trade to $150 billion by 2030. And work more closely in areas from security to technology. Justin Nazario for the rest of the details.
It was South Korean President Lee Jae-myung's first time hosting a foreign leader since taking office in June, and the first visit by Vietnam's Communist Party chief to Seoul in more than a decade. The talks come as the two nations mark 10 years since their free trade deal, and with Vietnam now South Korea's third largest trading partner after China and the US. Bilateral trade reached nearly $87 billion last year, and more than 10,000 Korean companies now operate in Vietnam. Lee calls Vietnam a very important neighbor in both trade and security, promising to back Korean businesses abroad and push ahead with major projects like nuclear power plants, high-speed rail, and new cities. The nuclear deal includes training and tech transfer for Vietnam's first reactors, set to go online by 2035. Vietnam's Stolam says the visit is about boosting what he calls a strategic partnership and practical cooperation, and he's invited Lee to visit Hanoi. The trip concluded with 10 new agreements covering energy, finance, science, and infrastructure, a push to diversify supply chains as both nations face steep U.S. import tariffs. Justin Azario, your citizen correspondent, reporting for Newsline World.
Good news for South Africa's factories. Manufacturing grew by 1.9% in June compared to the same time last year. Statistics South Africa says most of that growth came from the food and beverages sector, contributing 1.4 percentage points, followed by petroleum, chemicals, rubber, and plastics, adding 0.4 points. Month-on-month production was flat after gains of more than 2% in May and nearly 2% in April, showing how volatile the sector can be. Sales, however, were up to 2.4% from May, fueled by a stronger demand for food and drinks and motor vehicles and transport equipment, each adding 0.8 percentage points. Analysts say they'll be watching closely to see whether that rising demand will keep production moving forward in months ahead. Coming up, in France, devastation after the country's worst wildfire in 70 years, fanned by heat waves. Residents are returning to what's left of their homes and business after the blaze scorched thousands of hectares. The United Nations condemns the Al Jazeera journalist killings and calls for an independent investigation. Israel claims one was a Hamas commander, a charge the network denies. And a celebration of culture and unity in Japan. The Kingdom of Jesus Christ 2025 summer camp, bringing Filipinos and friends together for Thanksgiving performances. Stay tuned for more news.
Hala, magnanakaw!
Magnanakaw! Magnanakaw!
Uy, magnanakaw!
Magnanakaw! Magnanakaw!
Ano kayang gagawin ko? Ipamimigay ko yung konti para tumigil sila sa pag-iingay.
Pare, magnanakaw, namimigay ng pera.
Eto ang sayo.
Wow! Ang bait ng magnanakaw!
Eto naman sayo.
Kuya, yung
eto
share ko! Sana
Huwag ka nang maingay. Eto pa. Tama na yan. Nakikipalato lang kayo eh. Huwag nang maingay. Diba? Konti lang pinamigay ko, mabait na ako. Tahimik na sila. Easy. Ngayon, pwede ko na tong suluhin.
Masaya ang mga tao, pero tama po ba ito? Di po ba ang nakikinabang sa magnanakaw ay kasabwat ng magnanakaw?
Ikaw, kinukonsenti mo ba ang legal na korupsyon?
The United Nations has condemned the killing of 6 Palestinian journalists in an Israeli airstrike on Gaza City on the 10th of August, calling for an independent and impartial investigation. The UN says at least 242 journalists have been killed in Gaza since the war began. More on this report from Almar Forzuelo.
The UN Secretary General's spokesperson, Stéphane Dujarric, described the latest killings as a stark reminder of the extreme dangers journalists face in conflict zones.
Journalists and media workers must be respected, they must be protected, and they must be allowed to carry out their work freely, free from fear and free from harassment.
The airstrike killed Al Jazeera journalist Anas Al-Sharif, Mohammed Kirke, Ibrahim Zahir, Mohammed Nofal, and Mohammed Aliwa. Israel admitted targeting Al-Sharif, accusing him of leading a Hamas cell, allegations he had previously denied, insisting his only role was to report the truth from the ground without bias. Dujarric stressed that accountability for such acts is essential, though often delayed in times of war.
Accountability tragically takes time, especially in conflict, but accountability needs to happen. But there will need to be accountability for what happened.
When pressed on whether killing journalists constitutes a war crime under the Geneva Conventions, Dujarric said the conventions are clear. They must always be respected and called for personal accountability for perpetrators. The incident comes amid an expanded Israeli military offensive in Gaza, following a decision by Israel's Security Cabinet to take full control of Gaza City. The conflict began after Hamas launched a deadly attack on southern Israel on October 7, 2023, killing more than 1,100 people and taking over 200 hostages. The ensuing Israeli military campaign has killed more than 61,000 people in Gaza, according to Palestinian authorities. The UN says journalists remain vital to documenting the realities on the ground, especially when conflicting claims come from both sides.
The only way for people to actually know what is going on the ground is for journalists to be able to do their work freely.
Dujarric confirmed Secretary General Antonio Guterres has not been allowed to enter Gaza, with the closest access point reached being Rafah. For God and my beloved Philippines, Almar Forzuelo, SMNI News.
A powerful explosion has struck one of America's largest steel facilities, leaving at least one person dead and many others injured. The blast ripped through the U.S. Steel Clairton Coke Works plant south of Pittsburgh on Monday. Footage from the scene shows a sudden flash, followed by thick black smoke billowing into the sky. Authorities say dozens were hurt or trapped under debris, and 2 workers remain unaccounted for. Emergency crew are on site searching the wreckage and assisting the injured. The facility, which employs several thousand people, is a key player in North America's steelmaking industry. Officials have yet to confirm the cause of the explosion, and investigations are underway. The plant's operators and local authorities say worker safety remains the priority as rescue efforts continue. Days after France's worst wildfire in more than 70 years, residents of Fonjoncos are returning to what's left of their homes and business. The August 5 blaze swept through thousands of hectares, leaving charred landscapes and a community in shock. More in this report from Sara Santos.
The fire, which burned through 16,000 hectares in just 24 hours, is now under control. But in its wake, it has left destroyed homes, blackened tree skeletons, and hillsides stripped bare. Authorities say over 2,000 firefighters were mobilized to battle the flames, which consumed woodland, vineyards, and farmland during the height of the tourist season. At least one person was killed and hundreds were forced to evacuate. Among those returning is celebrated French chef Gilles Goujon, owner of the 3 Michelin star restaurant L'Auberge de Vieux-Puy, whose building was spared.
Folie. J'ai appelé l'auberge, j'ai appelé les enfants qui étaient là, ils étaient là, pour savoir un peu comment on était. Puis au bout d'un moment, j'ai mon fils qui me montre les images du voisin, là, qui était derrière le champ qui était en train de brûler, il était devant. Des flammes de je sais pas dire, mais dans son téléphone, j'ai l'impression que vous avez au moins 30 mètres, c'était énorme. Et là, je lui ai dit, mais écoutez, mais il n'y a personne qui vous a dit de... J'ai dit, tu sais quoi, ramassez vos affaires et il faut partir. Là, quand je suis arrivé, la première des choses, d'abord, c'est l'auberge, quoi. L'auberge, elle est intacte. Et là, on monte, et je découvre ça. Et plus j'avance, plus je vois. Et là, ouais, c'est dur. C'est tellement... Non, oui, même là, 4 jours plus tard, j'ai toujours pas les mots tristes. Bon, triste, je sais pas. Enfin, voilà.
While Gujon's restaurant stands untouched, many of his neighbors face the daunting task of rebuilding from ashes. Recovery teams are assessing the full extent of the damage, and environmental experts warn it could take decades for the forested hills to recover. Officials say the investigation into the cause of the blaze is ongoing, but for Fonjon Couz, the focus now is on helping residents rebuild and come to terms with the scale of the loss. Reporting, Sarah Santos, SMNI News.
Japan is once again pushing for the end of South Korea's ban on seafood imports from Fukushima and 7 other prefectures, a restriction that's been in place for more than a decade following the 2011 nuclear disaster. More of this report live from Gai Saito in Japan.
Yes, Franco, Japan's Agriculture Minister Shinjiro Koizumi made the appeal in a rare face-to-face meeting with South Korea's Foreign Minister Cho Yoon in Seoul. The talks also touched on trade, security and closer ties as both nations mark 60 years of diplomatic relations. Japan's Agriculture Ministry says Koizumi stressed the safety of Japanese seafood and called for the ban to be lifted. The measure in place since 2013 targets seafood from areas near the Fukushima Daiichi plant, citing radiation concerns. Koizumi pointed out that many South Korean tourists eat Japanese seafood during their visits, saying this proves confidence in its safety has returned. The meeting took place on the sidelines of the APEC Food Security Ministerial in Incheon, along with a rare three-way meeting with China's agriculture chief, the first in 7 years. Officials say the talks are part of efforts to build future-oriented ties between Seoul and Tokyo, and later this month, South Korea's president will be heading to Japan for a summit with Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba. And that's the latest news so far, Franco.
If you grew up watching Camp Rockers singing along to the Jonas Brothers, this one's for you. The trio's latest concert in New Jersey wasn't just a trip down memory lane. It turned into a surprise reunion that had fans reliving one of Disney Channel's most unforgettable moments. Here's Andrea Santos for our Showbiz News.
It was a night of pure nostalgia in New Jersey as the Jonas Brothers turned back time and brought a surprise guest to the stage. The Jonas 20 Greetings from Your Hometown tour kicked off at MetLife Stadium on August 10, drawing thousands of screaming fans. Joe, Nick, and Kevin Jonas belted out their biggest hits, but one moment had the crowd losing their minds. After singing his 2008 hit Gotta Find You, Joe introduced none other than Demi Lovato. The two reunited for a Camp Rock throwback, performing This Is Me and Wouldn't Change a Thing, with Nick and Kevin joining in. First aired in 2008, Camp Rock starred Lovato as Mitchie and Joe as Shane, a Disney Channel love story that gave fans one of the era's most iconic duets. After the show, Demi posted this clip on TikTok, thanking the Jonas Brothers for what she called an unforgettable night. From Disney Channel to center stage, that's one reunion that had fans singing every word. This is Andrea Santos, your citizen correspondent, bringing you latest show buzz.
And now, sports with a touch of showbiz. From scoring goals on the pitch to scoring one in love, Cristiano Ronaldo has taken his relationship to the next level. The football superstar and the longtime partner, Georgina Rodriguez, are officially engaged. And the announcement has fans going crazy for more than just the size of that ring. This story from Carlo de la Peña.
After nearly 8 years together, football legend Cristiano Ronaldo has popped the question. The Portuguese superstar is officially engaged to longtime girlfriend Argentine-Spanish model Georgina Rodriguez. The couple, together since 2016, are raising a blended family of 5 kids. Their love story began in Madrid when Ronaldo walked into the Gucci store where Georgina worked as a sales assistant. And now, they're making headlines for more than romance. Georgina announced the big news on Instagram, showing off a massive oval-cut diamond ring resting on Ronaldo's hand. Experts say that rock could weigh up to 20 carats and carry a price tag between $2 and $5 million US. But for fans, the real question is, when is the wedding? That date is shaping up to be one of the most talked about events in both the sports and celebrity world. Reporting for Newsline World, Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
Jesus Christ in Japan drew praise from the Filipino community, highlighted by the successful 2025 summer camp and a special Thanksgiving presentation. Ivy Estilo reports from Kanagawa.
From cultural dances to heartfelt songs of praise, the spirit of unity was alive at the 2025 summer camp of KOJC in Japan, attended by Filipinos and friends from various places.
The 2025 KOJC Summer Camp was held in Kanagawa, joined by kingdom-like congregations from Tokyo, Saitama, Ibaraki, Nagoya, Gunma, Osaka, Kyoto, Fukuoka, and even from South Korea. It featured cultural dances from the Philippines, Japan, and South Korea. As well as songs of praise and thanksgiving to the Almighty Father. This year's summer camp was special as it was the first time the Filipino community or Philcom in Japan joined the event.
Nagpapasalamat din sila kay Pastor dahil kahit first time silang sumali sa 10th summer camp sa gathering ng KOJC, madali sila nakablend dahil sa before pa, napakinggan na nila si Pastor doon sa stage at nagbago yung pananaw nila.
Brother Linito shares that many attendees gain a deeper understanding of Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy's true story during the 16th-day KOJC siege, which enlightened and inspired them. The Filipino community in Japan also admires Pastor Kibuloy's vision for the Philippines, actively supporting his campaign during the 2025 elections. That is why they continue to attend every KOJC gathering.
Kahit anong kultura pa, kung saan ka pagaling, Bisaya ka man, Tagalog ka man, o Japanese ka man, o Korean ka man. Kaya yung team natin, nag-represent din yun sa lahat ng mga presentation na ginawa ng summer camp. Kaya merong culture dance ng Korea, ng Japan, at ng Pilipinas. So pinagbuklod.
Aside from the summer camp, KOJC Japan also held a special Thanksgiving and worship presentation to thank the Almighty Father for His continued guidance and their mission in the land of the rising sun. Filipino attendees joined and worship, lifting prayers for Pastor Kibuloy's strength amid ongoing challenges. Here are the messages of gratitude to the good pastor.
At ako'y nagpapasalamat, lalong-lalo na sa pagbibigay ng pagkakataon na maging kabahagi kami ng iyong pagbibigay ng kaliwanagan. At ito ay nagpapatunay lamang na dapat mong ipagpatuloy ang iyong gawain at ito ay dapat halintunaran ng bawat Pilipino o buong sambayan ng Pilipino. At sana po, tatag lang, Pastor, sana ito na yung end of your month na makalabas ka na. Praise the Father po.
Itong experience na ito, treasure namin to, ay forever na hindi namin makakalimutan. Sana imbitahin ulit kami at magiging KOJC na kami ba? tuloy-tuloy. Yung steadiness, tuloy-tuloy yung nakaschedule na summer camp, tuloy-tuloy yung intrams. Ang ganda-ganda talaga kasi hindi natitinag. And that to me is truly admirable.
Excited na excited po sila, Pastor. Ang Filipino community, lalong-lalo na yung sa RDPU, talagang inaantay ka nila, Pastor. Gusto nila na makabalik na po kayo dito, Pastor, para sa KOJC. At hopefully, Pastor, pag ipagkakaloob ng Ama, dito na tayo sa Tokyo, Pastor, mag-KOJC. Yung sinabi niyo po, Pastor, na lakihan yung venue, sigurado mapupuno yun, Pastor. Kasi sa dami na po ng mga followers po ninyo na mula sa Filipino community. Praise the Father. Salamat po, Pastor.
The 2025 KOJC Summer Camp in Japan stands as a powerful reminder that under the kingdom's message, diverse cultures can come together united in faith and purpose. This is Ivy Astilio, your global citizen correspondent, reporting from Newsline World.
With the words of the sun. When we love, we do not love in words, but in deeds. And that's all for this edition of Newsline World. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I am Franco Baranda. Thank you for watching. Goodbye.
Madalas ka bang napapasobra sa pag-scroll sa phone mo kahit puro masasamang balita ang nakikita mo? Isipin mo ito. Nakahiga ka na sa kama, nagche-check lang ng phone bago matulog. Tapos, hindi mo na malayan, ilang oras ka na palang nagbabasa at nanonood ng mga balita tungkol sa digmaan, sakuna, politika, at lahat ng masasamang nangyayari sa mundo. Nakakaramdam ka na ng kaba at pagod, pero tuloy mo pa rin ang scroll mo. Ang tawag dyan ay doom scrolling. Ito ang habit ng paulit-ulit na pagtingin sa mga negatibo o nakaka-depress na content tulad ng digmaan, krimen, o problema sa mundo. Nakaka-stress, pero hindi mo pa rin mapigilan. Sa isang pag-aaral ng Texas Tech University, ang sobrang konsumo ng masasamang balita ay nauugnay sa pagtaas ng stress, anxiety at pisikal na sintomas gaya ng pagkapagod at sakit ng ulo. Ayon naman sa Harvard Health, ang doom scrolling ay nagpapataas ng fight or flight hormones tulad ng cortisol at adrenaline na nakakapagpabigat ng isip at katawan. Nakakaapekto ito sa iyong mood, tulog at maging sa mental at physical health mo. At kapag naman puro memes at random na content ang pinapanood mo ng sunod-sunod hanggang sa mawalan ka na ng gana na mag-isip at gumawa ng iba pang gawain, ang tawag naman dyan ay brain rot. Sa Gen Z at tinatawag na internet culture, ang brain rot ay overconsumption o sobrang tagal na panonood ng paulit-ulit, mababaw, magulo o walang saysay na content online hanggang sa parang manhid na ang utak mo. Kapag nasobrahan, syempre, nakakasama. Nawawalan ka na ng focus, nawawala ang motivation, hirap mag-isip ng malalim, parang lutang o foggy ang utak. Masaya sa simula, pero kapag sobra, napapagod ang isip mo. Nahihirapang mag-concentrate at parang lutang. Mas delikado pa ito sa mga bata dahil ang utak nila ay nasa proseso pa ng pag-develop. Kaya mas malakas ang epekto ng doom scrolling at brain rot sa kanila. Maaaring makaapekto sa pag-aaral, pag-iisip at pakikitungo sa iba. Ang higit sa 4 na oras ng screen time araw-araw sa mga kabataan ay konektado sa 35 to 88% na mas mataas na posibilidad ng depresyon, anxiety at stress. Base ito sa isang malawakang pag-aaral sa Brazil. Kaya, maging balanse. Magpahinga sa screen, magbasa, makipagkwentuhan, magdasal, maging present lagi. Alagaan ang iyong isipan. Kung anong itinatanim sa isipan mo, yun ang lalago.
This is SMNI News Channel. Truth that matters.